Sonoma County, Rohnert Park, the hub. I'm excited that all of the community members, not just from Rohnert Park, but in Sonoma County and around the state of California and the United States. So we'll have probably different people on. So I want to say thank you, Lupe, for being here. Thank you, Jill. And of course, thank you, Chief. Chief, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really, really well. I'm excited right now. And I just want to go ahead and get started. There's some things that we barely have anything in the chat as far as any questions and all. But, I just wanted to ask you, uh, where would you like to start off today, this evening?
Well, I one of the things I always like to say is just I'm pretty much overwhelmed by the number of people who give up an hour of their day to actually participate in this, and I am so thankful for that because we really want to, as an agency, we wanted to just be so integrated in our community, and the last year has been pretty tough. So coming up with this idea about chat with a chief, to kind of give people the opportunity to ask questions and meet me and understand that I'm just part of the department and I work for them, was kind of an idea I came up with, and the fact that people actually will log on and they want to hear it makes me excited. So that's where I just want to thank people for giving up an hour of their day to do this. And I reached out to you a while back and said, hey, after I met you through the council meeting and we've talked, and so I've been excited about the opportunity that you giving up an hour of your day, even more than that, because you had to get questions and stuff. So I just thank you for coming on, and I thank everybody for giving up some time to just come in and chat.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you said that. And it's interesting because of these times, from the COVID, a lot of people are home. A lot of people are stressed. A lot of people are trying to figure out ways to cope and deal with just everyday things. And so that I'm glad that this opportunity is here for everyone. And I'm just wondering, when COVID is over, is this something that we can keep, virtually? Because I know as before it had started where it was in person, where people were able to come and meet you in person and all. And so how do you feel about that, about keeping it virtually?
Yeah, these are conversations that I think every company, every city is having, including us at the city level. Of this pandemic was horrible, and what it did to our community and our businesses, and our kids it is devastating. And I think at some point, if you step back and you just try to find some silver linings in it, what you can say is, well, it taught us that there may be some new ways to do business, right? And even though we will probably move back to more in-person stuff, there's no use in getting rid of what we learned. And so I absolutely plan on using this format, because what I have found in this format is it's so much easier and maybe just convenient, right? For people to get off work, get home, get settled, and actually be able to just log on to Facebook or log on to this chat and get that interaction, as opposed to having to drive to a location to see, to meet their police department or see it. We're still going to have community meetings, and we hope we can get people engaged and to come out. But there's no reason not to continue this, because I think it makes it much more convenient, and it gives us the ability to still communicate.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to give a disclaimer to everybody. I'm going to be looking through chats and different emails and different notes and stuff. So it's not that I'm not paying attention to it if I'm not actually looking and all. So there, I want to start off with one of the first questions here. And these are not, the names. I'm just going to be anonymous, and I might give out ages or something like that. So to start off with this one, the question is for Tina Rogers. My kids love hip hop and dance. My 8-year-old's natural dance style has always leaned towards breakdance. Do you have any knowledge of breakdance lessons in the area? And the answer is yes, I do. But unfortunately, due to COVID and the, keeping our social distancing right now, we're kind of laying low on that. So that we definitely have lots of classes all over Sonoma County, just not just breakdancing and hip hop, of all forms of dance, the community centers, Finley Center, and Rohnert Park. And so I'm just talking in general because these questions could come from a lot of places. But myself, I am a multicultural arts educator, and I do teach dance, hip hop, break dancing after school sessions. And right now I'm not doing anything through Zoom, kind of giving it a break, but I'm looking forward to going back into school sessions and having an after school program. So just be on the lookout. Just keep your ears and eyes open, and just check online for breakdance classes as we head towards summertime. Okay, and I know definitely by next school year, we should be back up and running. I know the kids, going to school a couple days a week is not going to cut that. So Chief, and when I get started with the breakdancing stuff, I hope you're ready to do some back spins and head spins and stuff,
I am glad you answered that question, because that is one that I would not have been able to answer. So thank you.
Right, yeah. I don't want you to to feel bad if I'm like taking all your questions and stuff like that. Okay, so but anyways, so let's move on to some serious meat and potatoes and stuff like that. Okay, from the breakdance stuff. We have another one that actually kind of like, it was kind of concerning here. Let's start with this one here. Have the Rohnert Park police officers received training for probation searches as ordered by the courts?
Absolutely. So just after I started here, there just prior to my starting here, there had been a court decision based on a probation search that took place in our community. And the judge, as part of the ruling, wanted us to come up with an actual policy to address probation searches, mainly residential. And so we did. We developed from the ground up probation search policy. It relates to residences. It's a pretty strict policy. It was vetted through the attorney's office. And it's actually something that we've given to Lexipol, and Lexipol is looking at actually making it one of their overall policies to put in the book. So I know it's a well-written policy. And after that was approved and made a policy, every member of our department received training on that exact policy. So yes, we followed the court's ruling 100%. And it's a good policy, because, and looking back, we should have policies on that, right? To help guide our officers, and also, to protect the rights of our citizens. So yes, to answer your questions, absolutely.
Okay, great. So then now I'm going to just go in, no pun intended when I say this, firing squad type of thing. So another one is that even if this is an awkward question or not, right now we have the George Floyd trial. It's in the news, it's going on. And what is the position of the Rohnert Park Police Department of the type of the restraint that was used on George Floyd?
So I know that trial is being aired. And I'm not watching it. I mean, I don't, my workday doesn't really provide me to watch the trial that is being aired. What I will say is, when that came out and we saw what happened, and, the information was that, this officer knelt on the neck of George Floyd, and then the time limit, that's if that's what occurred, that's not acceptable. That is not an appropriate use of force. And one of the things that we train our officers in is that once you are able to use force to overcome resistance, and I'm not in the trial, I'm not one of the attorneys, but when I watch that, and I see that that there was the resistance didn't continue, but the action continued, right? And so I think from a standpoint, I'm not going to speak for every officer in here, because that would not be fair. But when I saw it, I did not support what had happened out there, and I believe that kneeling on someone's neck for that period was inappropriate.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely wanted to hear you say that you definitely don't support that. I don't think anybody does. And so we're going to move on to this part that kind of can lead into some other questions that we're getting. Do you think the Rohnert Park police officers call Sonoma County behavioral health professionals to the scene when they encounter people with mental health concerns? So excuse me the way that I'm reading it. So basically, do your officers call Sonoma County behavioral health professionals to the scene when they encounter people with mental health concerns and
Yes.
behavior?
So in Sonoma County, there is a mobile team, and it's a mobile response team that will respond to mental health issues. That is one team for the entire county, and that team is not always available. We do reach out to them when we have a known mental health issue, and we need that level of help. But it's infrequent that we get that support, only because that single team is all over the county and is not always available. So it's interesting you asked that question, though, because if anybody just watched the 2 o'clock special council meeting, they saw myself and the city manager doing a presentation on what is known as the CAHOOTS model out of Eugene, Oregon, which is a mobile crisis response team, and which received a lot of council support today. In fact, full council support for us to move forward and looking at bringing that type of a response to Rohnert Park, so that we have an additional response model to deal with these types of issues, right? I've always said that when you're sending uniformed officers to mental health crisis, we're sending the wrong people. But that's all that's available, right? The calls come into dispatch, and that's the tools we have in our tool belt. So I was really excited today to see the full support of council to say, hey, I love it, right? We talk about giving us now a fourth tool. We got law enforcement, we got fire, we got EMS, and now we're going to try to bring an absolute mental health response team, mobile crisis team into our city to respond to exactly those types of incidents. So we're not sending a uniformed officer.
Okay. So this is from Facebook Live. Since officers are cross-trained in law enforcement, can the fire engine make traffic stops, or and does that at least one firefighter carry any police gear? So basically, can anybody on the fire department, can they do traffic stops?
So technically, yes. Technically, they are sworn officers all the time, and even when they're on the fire engine and or fire truck, which I've been told, make sure I know that's the one with the ladder. But and it's interesting because our engines actually are some of the only engines in the state of California that have a location, a secure location for firearms should it be needed, right? But that we don't do it unless it's absolutely necessary. And I think the last time we did it was our engine was was heading back to the station, I believe, and they were following someone who was intoxicated, obviously, or at least having some kind of issue to where the driving was unsafe. So they felt they needed to make that stop. So yes, they can, but they're only in dire situations. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now I want to move on to because I know like you're relatively new, and congratulations, on taking the position, and then you had came in, and it's been a lot of stuff going on. So I want to move to this here. Since can you detail your policy, procedures, and practices that have changed since the beginning of 2018? Not counting the command level restructuring that was approved 2 weeks before you started work for the department. And do that briefly, and it's sort of like let's start with that. Just detail,
Okay, yeah.
like in short, some, so the policies that have changed since you've been here.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, as you know, I got here on December 28th of 2018. So pretty much the beginning of 2019. And since that time, yes, there's been a lot going on, a lot to work through, which we have. we've updated our policy 300, which is our use of force policy, and added language for de-escalation, duty report, excessive force, supervisory review, trying to put more oversight on that and accountability. As you know, we've removed the carotid restraint from our use of force policy.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest things that we've done since coming here is at my old agency, we had a program called Blue Team, and it was to track incidences, right? And when I got here, we didn't have that program, and we brought that in. We brought that in I guess probably mid late 19 or 2019, and so now we track all use of force. And the other thing we did was it used to be you tracked use of force when there was some kind of dynamic use of force. We now track use of force on anything above a control hold. And if it's a use of force, it has to go in the Blue Team. The supervisor has to review it. The lieutenant has to review it, and they have to review the body cam that goes with it. Because we want to know what we're doing out there, what levels of use of force we're using. And sometimes it can show some training needs, right? Because we see that we may need to train on something. So, but what it does is it tracks all the use of force now, which is really important to know.
So you brought up training. So are you all for retraining your officers?
We continually retrain our officers. So one of the other things we've done is we've included our de-escalation training for all force options, right, which is use of force, firearms, taser, right? So we've tried to go to a new model of de-escalate first, right, to see if we can bring the situation down without having to use force. We've taken out the wrap, or we've added the wrap instead of the hobble. The wrap is used to wrap someone's leg as opposed to the hobbles, which are used to tie up. So we no longer use the hobble. We went to the wrap. One of the things we instituted with our defensive tactics training is, first of all, if you have an extra officer or there's someone, that person needs to be dedicated to the airway monitoring and prone restraint, right? To try to make sure that if the person is struggling and we're trying to get them in handcuffs, we've got someone now monitoring them. Should we have that extra person? We've also been training on, as soon as you get somebody, restrained, if they're on their stomach, get them off their stomach, get them onto their side. We're implementing a body worn camera auditing program so we can see what's going on out there and making sure that we're meeting the public's expectations. Command staff has been currently going through a webinar system. It's a series of webinars on use of force through our Lexipol, which we're going to be passing down and training all of our officers on. And a lot of that is the last one was a duty to intercede. The first one was de-escalation and the importance of making good decisions. And we've also been really partnering with Catholic Charities and hosts to try to involve them more in the homeless contacts so that it's not police related. And so that we're not putting ourselves in situations where force might be used. So we have really go ahead.
Yeah, that's really, really important, and as we're moving forward into the, these questions and stuff that, that you're definitely saying that and recognizing that. And then back to, the policy, as you being like the director of public safety, like, so for the manual, like how often is the manual reviewed and updated? Has there really been like any major policy revisions? And if so, what? And what about any of the orders, special orders, general orders, personnel orders, any of that kind of stuff? And that's just going back to specifically, your position. Right.
So we receive updates and do a review about every 6 months in our lexical policies. And there's constant tweaking of language. The last major overhaul we did was on our 300 policy 300 again, which is a use of force, because even after we looked at it the first time and made some revisions, AB 392 passed, right? And which was the reasonable, necessary versus reasonable statute, which put a lot of new language in there. So we had to completely go through 300 and revamp that. So it's in compliance with AB 392, which is a state requirement. So, and then anytime there is a revision in a policy, that policy is sent out to every officer through what we call Target Solutions. It's a training program.
Okay.
And every officer gets an alert that they have a training due. It puts a due date on it, and the officers are required to go in there, read that policy, acknowledge that they've read that policy and understand it, and then submit it. So I have a tracking system of who has completed it and who has not. And then once a year, when we put the new policy book out that has changes to a lot of things, they're again required to go in there, see whatever has changed, acknowledge it, submit it, so that we have a tracking. So it's not just since we do a policy review and we just toss it on a shelf. We do a policy review and we make sure everybody in the department is obligated to look at it, read it, understand it, and submit it. So I think
Right.
we're doing a pretty good job of
Policies.
policy changes.
Yeah, and this is always going to be an ongoing thing. That's always, always going to
Ongoing.
come up. Yeah, definitely. And then, one thing that's really important, and this is like, all this stuff is important to me and like anybody in the community as well. But the number one thing also is, and this comes up a lot, is oversight. And I know there's so many different ways of implementing this and all of this. But here's a question. I would like to know if RPPD is going to voluntarily implement a program similar to that implemented under the ordinance created by Measure P to deal with police accountability and oversight in Rohnert Park. And if so, what's the timeline that's being implemented? And that, and that's just a one question, but that question has came up so many times. So what are the steps and who's in charge of getting that started? And, have you, brought that up to them, or is that something that you can take more of an initiative of doing?
Yeah, so it's funny because you and I, in some of our conversations, I think have had this discussion, right? And so if anyone watched the January council meeting, they saw that the council set they added 3 priorities for the city and for the council to get through. One was climate change. They want to address climate change. One was homelessness, and one was police community relations and rebuilding trust. That was one of them. And so under that umbrella of that's where we are going to start addressing what I'll say oversight in the city of Rohnert Park looks like, right? Because you and I have had conversations that there's many facets and many different varieties of what oversight can be.
Exactly.
And this will be a policy decision that's driven by council, and we will be having that discussion in front of council soon. I know that I'm in the process of starting to work up the information to come in and present to council. And I think if people have watched council meetings, they probably have an idea of kind of how this works. So we're going to bring a lot of recommendations and ideas to council, and we're going to seek their direction. So it's going to be discussion and direction item. So look at the council agendas and look for a discussion direction item on police accountability or police relationships and stuff. And we want the community involved in it, so it won't go unnoticed. We'll let people know.
How soon?
Well, that date's not set by me, but it will be coming. I would probably say in the next couple months it'll be coming up. It's a big undertaking, and it's a big job because we want to make sure that we're providing council and the public with all the information so that we can make that decision. So it'll probably come in front of council. I would say within the next couple of months. There'll be discussions on it, and we'll keep tightening it down until we get it locked in.
Will this also be the public be included in this? Like, is there also going to be like a community oversight? Is this, is it going to be involved not just with law enforcement and different, agencies and different things going on, but, does the public have more of a say so?
So we want input. We want the public's input, right? This is you know, our society, it's not run by one or two people, right? We want the public input. However, the final decision, the policymakers are the council. And so I will be speaking to the council. We will be getting feedback from the council. We'll be getting feedback from the public. And we will take all that information and we will meld it together to try to come up with a system that works in Rohnert Park and that provides the oversight people are looking for, right? And provides me the opportunity to come in front of that oversight or accountability unit, and present what's going on in the department. That's really what we want in the department. So I don't know what exactly that looks like. We're putting together a lot of ideas. You know, chat with the chief. This right here is part of trying to open that dialogue and open that communication. And I get a lot of, after these, I get a lot of public comment coming in through my email. You know, we have some discussions. So absolutely, we want the public involved.
Right, because it's really, you know, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be just like cutting you off, and I apologize too. But I mean, it is very, very important that, you know, citizens be chosen and there's a citizens review committee, even if it's like out, you know, a little bit different than oversight committee or however. So that's just like something that I'm like really, really, you know, I'm backing that as well. You know, I want to move on to this that kind of like goes into a little bit more of the meat and potatoes, and all. And a disclaimer for children and stuff. With the lawsuits that the city is settling for public safety department, criminal sworn officers, you know, have done illegal things, robbing money, drugs, misconduct, all kinds of different things. I'm not going to say too much. What are you going to? How are you going to make sure that the taxpayers are not, you know, currently funding any more criminal activities from your officers?
That's an interesting way to put it. So
I had to break it down.
When I got here in 2000, basically 2019, late 2018, there had been a lot of incidents that had occurred. And as I said earlier, we've been dealing with some of those incidents in the past, right? Trying to get out from under them, trying to get them taken care of. And someone mentioned in there earlier about what have I done since I've been here, not including the restructure, right? Well, the restructure was huge, right? Because it has given us a lot more oversight and the ability to hold people accountable, right? And so, you know, I wasn't here when the interdiction issues were going on, and I wasn't here when the incident happened with the Explorer. I wasn't here when a couple of those things happened. But what I'm here now, and we have got a very strong structure, and you know, I believe every officer that we hire here and is here to do the right job, and I'll support them to the end as long as they're doing it right, right? And they are doing it right, because what I'll tell that person there is that if you go back to December 28th, 2018, we haven't had those issues, right? And I'm not saying it's all me. I'm just saying that we have put a good structure in place. We've got good people in here. We've got good officers who want to come and do their job. And the officers who decided to do that stuff in the past and get involved in that activity, they have been held accountable. They do not work here anymore. And we have supported, we have been extremely supportive in investigations that have taken place in that, and we will continue to, because we will not tolerate that type of behavior. Right. We do not sponsor the interdiction stuff that was going on. That we don't support that. So I would hope that, you know, the answer is that, you know, we're not paying out lawsuits that have happened since late 2018 when I got here.
Right. You know? I understand. Yeah, I understand, you know, about that. But like when you have, you know, the citizens, you know, they've been, you know, putting their input in for like the past 20 years. And so if you have people that have been doing that for like, you know, the last 20 years, and then we're coming up and things are happening in 2017, 2018, you know, all this stuff, you know, or even prior to that, prior to you getting here, it's just at what point, you know, are there going to be real changes? And you understand that. And I'm glad that, you know, you're taking this on, like you're taking it all on, you know, and I appreciate that. But I'm asking you this question here, Chief. Is the FBI investigating your department?
No,
Okay. How much were the legal fees to defend criminal cops in the past 10 years?
I do not have that answer. I don't know. I don't have it.
Roughly, rough to
I couldn't even give you a rough estimate. I wasn't here. I haven't, I mean, I've been here for two.
Right.
And I wouldn't see that information anyway. And, yeah, I don't know.
Okay. And since we're talking about the officers, there's a question on why doesn't your department have many women working as sworn officers? And, you know, I'm not going to be condescending with other people's, you know, questions. I'm not going to take that away from that. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, is there some type of toxic or dysfunctional thing or bias towards women professionally? I see two women from the department here, you know, right now, but, you know, we're talking about like swarm officers and that are, you know, out there patrolling 2 a.m. at night and all that.
Yeah, that's a fair question. And I'm glad someone asked because we don't get to boast about this too much, but we have our total sworn is 73.
Okay.
And I've got a couple openings, so we're not quite at 73 right now. So, and I have 11 sworn female officers who are trained in both fire and police, and they do an amazing job out there. And one of our fire crews right now, one of our fire shifts is a full female fire shift. Female engineer, female firefighter on the engine. So there is absolutely no toxicity in this department about female officers. We support them, we hire them. They are doing a phenomenal job, and I will continue to hire female officers. So
that's good. That's good to hear.
I believe we said it was said that we have the highest per capita number of female officers in our department north of San Francisco.
Okay.
So,
okay. So
I don't know if they got the numbers, but I hope they understand that's not how it is here.
Right, and you said that you have 2 openings, so or a couple of openings, and any of the public that's listening, if you can refer anybody, or if you want to like to you know, join, you know, especially being a female, it's open and ready. For another one from Facebook Live, what happens if your officers don't do the required training? Like, I don't know, is that a redundant question? Can they refuse that? That's
No.
weird. Okay.
No, training is mandatory.
Right. So it's your job.
I've not ever had an officer refuse to do training. But if they did, then there would be, you know, it would just start a disciplinary process on it. But it doesn't happen. Our officers actually look forward to training. We have training pretty much every Thursday. One side of the shift is getting trained like every Thursday. So, but yeah, our officers are required to do training. It's not a volunteer situation.
Okay. So yeah, so we're okay. So
they have to do training to keep their certificates up, to keep their posts approved. So yeah, it's just part of the job.
Okay. So let's move on a little bit of not necessarily completely away from any of the stuff that we're just talking about, because people can email you directly, and these chats are every first and third Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So this is something that everybody can join in. This is like really concerning because I grew up in Rohnert Park, you know, very small child. And so this is one, you know, I'm an 81-year-old. I am 81 years old and have been living in Rohnert Park, or calling Rohnert Park my home, for 45 years. Sadly, I no longer feel safe in my home. Do we simply need more police officers to stop the crime within our city? How does our city compare with a similar size or ratio of citizens to police officers, and a ratio of crimes with our city size? When one hears of so many things happening in our city, I feel very sad, disappointed, and scared. How safe am I, and what is being done to improve our fight against crime in our city? So that was a long paragraph here, but pretty much, you know, how do we make our elderly citizens feel safer?
Yeah, and you know, thank you for living in this community for 45 years, and I want you to continue living here. This is a safe community. I just put out the statistics, crime statistics for 2020, um, and actually crime has gone down. And you know, we don't see a lot of violent crime in Rohnert Park. But we have seen, you know, seen an increase, as we've talked about, in some burglaries and some thefts, the catalytic converters, you know, and so I'm not sure what she's hearing. Um, but yeah, there's, you know, there are people in this community who do bad things. But it's not a violent city to live in. It's a real very safe community to live in. And you know, we have the officers on the street, and you know, they're doing a great job. They're very proactive, and you know, we're instituting other things. You know, you'll see our officers doing more dedicated traffic control. You'll see our officers getting out of their cars during the day. And I mean, I'm sorry she feels that way, and I'd love to talk to her, you know, to just find out what she's feeling and why she's feeling that way. There may be a certain situation going on in her neighborhood that we can address. So I will reach out to her. I usually get the questions later. But Rohnert Park is an extremely safe community to live in. We are not experiencing the level of crime or the types of crime that other communities around us are.
Okay, so yeah, so that brings it to this. For, you know, there's a citizen that says, thank you for the extra patrol in East section at night. I've seen the units pass several nights at 2 a.m. when I'm getting home from work. There are quite a few issues during the daytime with groups of juveniles on bicycles on Emily Avenue. They ride in the middle of the road, litter, and at times talk homeowners as they pass by. When the call volume allows, can we get some extra patrol during day hours? I hate to call dispatch when they have already passed by and the problem is gone, but I also don't love going out into the street to pick up their trash or have my 7-year-old watch them in the middle of the road cursing and being a general nuisance. Thank you, RP Police Department, for keeping the community safe. It is not easy. It's not an easy time to be, you know, basically right now, and they handle yourselves very professionally. So, and maybe that's also what, you know, the elderly person was talking about as well. You know,
Possibly.
different things are going on.
Yeah, it's been amazing the number of kids I've seen out now because schools are closed. And I actually just stopped a group of kids who were riding, I think, riding wheelies down the street. They were riding in the middle of the street, and I stopped them. This is over in G section, and you know, just explain why it's dangerous. And a couple of them got no helmet tickets. So you know, nothing. We don't, you know, that is important to you. It's important to us. So I will definitely pass on to my patrol sergeants to get extra patrol during the day in East section. And thank you for that information.
Yeah. And I remember when I got one in Davis, you know, Davis is the city of the bikes. So yeah, that's interesting. So let's see here. So hi, Chief. This is in our chat. I noticed some public safety officers in M section driving white pickup trucks. Vehicle abatement is written on the rear of the vehicle. Are they doing what they can do to address the parking infractions, or do they serve another law enforcement purpose? It's having a nice effect, and the speeders slow down when they are here. So these white pickup trucks that's been around M section, what's going on with that?
Yeah, so we have 3 community services officers. So you'll see them out in the street. They wear the light blue uniforms. So they're not sworn police officers or community service officers, and they are in the white pickups. And part of their responsibilities is vehicle abatement and parking enforcement and 72-hour, you know, parking, towing vehicles. So yes, that's pretty much what they do. We actually have, the city has one code enforcement officer, and that person, Michelle, we kind of call it, she works from the curb in. So she kind of deals with the yard stuff and the tall grass and stuff that goes from the curb to your house. My code enforcement officers work from the curb out. So they're dealing with more of the traffic, the road, the parking stuff. So Yeah, but I understand that it still says public safety on it, and it still has the same effect on people driving in the neighborhood. So hopefully it is slowing down. And I will send a concern about the speeding over intersection to my traffic sergeant.
Okay, and so, and this is also, this is from Facebook, and this, and see what this, how this, this would work too. So the graffiti, what are the links that are taken to control the massive amounts of the graffiti? So is that like the people in the light blue uniforms as well, or it
Yeah,
is officers coming in?
it depends. I mean, if we get a call to graffiti and, we have a CSO available, they'll go over, they'll at least document, they'll take the pictures. And then we try to get, if it's on private property, we try to get we get the private property owner to cover it up. It's on public property, we let Public Works know. Because the one thing we do know about graffiti is if you leave it up, it encourages more. So we try to get it covered as soon as possible, but we also try to get photos of it. So that if we start seeing a series, or we start seeing the same graffiti, or we come across somebody we might contact or arrest, who has in possession something that shows their tag and we can match it, we can go back and use that information. So we do try to, but that'd be a code enforcement officer would go out there normally.
All right. And what about the RVs around Target?
That's yeah, that's a constant battle. That's a push them out, move them here, move them there. Behind Target on Laguna Drive has been a nightmare. We finally get that cleaned up, and they all just move onto the private property, onto Target, Burlington, that area. And so then that becomes the property owner. So now we have to deal with the property owner to get them to get the RVs off their lot, because we don't have authority on the private property. And then what they do is they move them, and where do they go? They go back out to Laguna on the street, and then we deal with them, and we move them, and they go back. So it's just game of moving parts. But I will say that I think people think we turn a blind eye to it, and we absolutely don't. That is dealing with the unsheltered and the homeless is a daily conversation at City Hall and public safety. And that's another thing that the CSOs end up doing a lot of, is the homeless management.
Right.
Tagging camps, helping Public Works clean up camps. And so we're constantly reaching out to the property owners and putting the requirement on them to get the motorhomes off their lot. But they got to go somewhere, and they end up on the streets. So
okay. So as we're approaching this, the last 15 minutes, I want to kind of speed this up a little bit. And I want to move on.
One more thing, because it's really important.
Okay.
And so I would encourage anybody who has questions about homeless or RVs or anything. One, if you want to jump in and help, we have the homeless roundtable, and you get that information off our website. But today there was a special council meeting. One thing they listened to was the COOTS program. And then the last thing, which is about a 2.5, almost 3 hour portion, was on homelessness and addressing homelessness. So I would encourage anybody who has questions to go on our website, pull up today's 2:00 meeting, and watch that discussion on homelessness to kind of see where we're moving and what we're trying to do to actually get those RVs somewhere else.
Okay. And I encourage everyone to go back and look at the archives, even back to 2019. Prior to that, you can see a lot of information that is there. From Facebook Live, if the city of Rohnert Park eliminates the sales and the use of safe and sane fireworks in the city, is there, or have you considered any additional policy or discipline? If off-duty officers are caught buying or setting off fireworks?
Well, it would be tough for anybody in Rohnert Park to do that, because I make them all work that night. Nobody gets the 4th of July off. But we have a zero tolerance policy. If you got fireworks, you'll get a citation. And I know that my officers, they swore an oath to uphold the laws, and they're not going to go out and buy illegal fireworks or do fireworks. So they would be subject to the same thing that the public's subject to. But they're all working the 4th of July. So They're not,
Yeah,
the only ones not working are the day shifters who got to get up so early that they're usually not out too late, but yeah, the same expectation applies to all of us as applies to the public.
right. Okay, so yeah, that's you know, any human being is going to do anything, as you've seen, in the past. I'm sure you got, the 70 something people there. I think they're probably trying to walk a straight line, and eliminate the other stuff that's happened in the past. This here is from the chat. I am horrified with the way that Jackie Elward, excuse me, Vice Mayor, the City Council, Jackie Elward, has been treated, threats in particular, by some of the public who disagree with her, and wonder whether she's getting enough protection. Much of the backlash is definitely racist in nature. How is the Rohnert Park Police Department protecting her, and in general doing something about the overt racism that is rampant in Rohnert Park?
Yeah, so I'll start out by saying that I'm not going to talk about anything we're doing for Jackie, or because that would make our job more difficult. So, but I am in touch with Jackie. I've been in touch with Jackie. We've had conversations. The phone call that Jackie received was appalling, and absolutely
Disgusting.
disgraceful. And and I'll say that, and I'll say that it came in. It was anonymous, right? It was a no caller ID call, which I thought was cowardly, because I think if you got something to say to somebody, you should say it to them. So I in this department are in no way supportive of anything that has happened, and we want to make sure Jackie is comfortable and safe in her home, as well as all the council members, because this is a hot issue, and there are a lot of people out there upset about it. And I think in the last chat, I talked about the fact that I will fight to the death to give you your right to have an opinion and to speak your mind, but I will not support rude or discourteous or disgraceful behavior when you're doing it. And we're all adults, and we should be able to have conversations about that and disagree, but still respect the other person's opinion. So, as far as Jackie's concerned, we are doing things to make sure that she, her family, and all the council members feel safe. And we don't. I'm still appalled at the behavior of the people who called and who made those remarks.
Yeah, well, and not only that, just being a coward about it. If you're going to say something, go ahead and identify yourself. And because of that, the elimination this particular year, and for my own personal feelings, I'm sure there's a lot of fear of all the fires that have been happening year after year, and a lot of decisions went into that. I'm not on the city council, but I was at that meeting. I did watch the whole thing. I heard what everybody had to say. But how does that, how can we eliminate illegal fireworks if you're not going to sell any safe and sane fireworks? Safe and sane, so that's pretty tough, a tough thing. But I'm glad that you're talking about that. And I want to bring up Branch Roth. That name has came up a lot, not just over me getting involved in this here, and I'm into saying people's names out of respect. And I understand, and I'm also you and I talked a lot, and I work with the youth, and I try to get them into directing their lives in such a manner that they won't be in situations that they will be harmed in any kind of way. And if it was you, if you were there, this is me and you talking, if you were there, what would you have done differently? Or could there have been anything that was done differently if there is a person that is, doesn't really pose a threat, as far as no, any type of weapons, naked, mentally out of it, We know now, like, with the policy and everything's getting serious, but like all of us have to relive that moment. And that's a big thing for people. And I also want to say, how do you think, I know you heard a lot about Officer Lawrence Jones and the way that he did things, in Runner Park for many, many years and decades. Can you kind of just touch on that? We only have like a few minutes left.
Yeah, that is a huge subject for 9 minutes. But so, I wasn't there when the incident happened at the hotel, and what I can say about it is there's a lot of information being put out through social media by individuals who have taken who have absorbed that information that they've seen and heard in their own manner. And I don't support everything they're saying about, how their description of it is. That was a very unfortunate incident. And I will start by saying, I am sorry it happened, and I am sorry that anyone lost their life in here. And I'm a true believer that no parent should ever have to bury their child. And so, there, I feel for the Roth family and what they've gone through. I have to say that there were a lot of other things that led to the result of what happened. And, what I try to do is now look at that situation and say, how can we get better? How can we look at trying not to put that individual or an individual in that situation and not put our personnel in that situation, which is why we've tried to come up with new response models. But there were a lot of things there's a lot of things about this case that people don't know. And I hope if they want to know about the case, they'll actually look into the case. They can read it. They can read articles from the Press Democrat who did some stories on it, more fact-based stories on it. And although the case, the whole thing is behind us, it's never out of our minds. I have 4 officers here that are still living with that day every day, right? And it takes a toll on our personnel in the department. And when we look at making changes, a lot of times those are the situations we look at and say, what do we need to change to make this not happen anymore? So again,
Yeah.
I have the deepest sympathy for the family because they had to bury a son, but I also understand what our personnel were put in that day and how it came about, and the result was bad, but there were a lot of things that led up to that result.
Right.
And I'm not going to second guess the officers that were there because I wasn't there, and they were doing what they believed they needed to do to get that situation under control. So Lawrence Jones, I never got a chance to meet that man, but there's a school named after him here, and you don't get schools and roads and bridges named after you unless you played a significant part in the community. And I
Can I tell you about him?
absolutely.
So what I learned from Officer Lawrence Jones is good policing, old school policing, being a part of the community, not just knowing, everybody in the community, but knowing, how far to take it and how far not to take it. And when there are second chances given that are, required and needed. He led a great example on, on how you do things and how you get things done and you get results. Because a lot of us, with social media, with the news in the last like 5, 7, 8 years, all we've seen is different police officers, whether they're police officers or they're BART Transit or they're sheriffs or CHP or people are chokeholding people because they're selling loose cigarettes. So these are the reasons why the people are saying like rogue police, bully police, racist police. Officer Lawrence Jones was African American, and he never used that against anybody. Whether whether it was a white kid that was doing something, he didn't say, I'm black and I'm abusing my power on you. Or he didn't come, pull up on people and be like, okay, well, you're a female, so I'm gonna be intimidating. So I think that what happens with all of us and all of our own biases, whether they're racial, whether it's gender, whether it's anything, we all have to dig deep and understand, like, where is humanity when we're dealing with things? I know there's great officers all over, but I know that there's some bad ones. And I know that there's some that, they're here to get busy. And, the bad guy can be anyone. Like, for instance, someone also said in the chat, there was I'm not sure, I can't think of the officer's name, but I think it was a female officer. And she had a habit of pulling over people of color. I don't know if you want to call them black, male, and I've been, looking so, with my hat on, like how I was earlier, stuff like that. And I get pulled over and they look and they, oh, but random things all the time. So it's not like people are picking on the police. And that's one thing that, like, officers and I hope that, you guys can have like more training and then bring in also different people in the public. And also when you guys go do your outreach, when you're trying to recruit, young people before they start getting in trouble and all that kind of stuff to become, to come in law enforcement. And maybe, some people can go out and outreach to the 9th graders and 8th graders and go over the codes and the laws. So they'll know, hey, this little thing is out of code. This is what a misdemeanor is. This one here will make it a felony. They don't know until they're caught up. And I have a few minutes left, and I have to say this. I got to say rest in peace to Sylvia Bracamonte. She was the woman that was killed last March of 2020. She was the manager of the group home there in Katati. That's a personal relationship. One of my younger sisters, that was her best friend. And that particular day that she was stabbed in her face and head and all that kind of stuff, she wasn't supposed to be at work. She was supposed to be at my brother John's wake. So we found out about her murder at my brother's wake. And she only went there to bring groceries for the house because it was COVID. And here's another thing. I grew up on Santa Barbara Drive, B section. I think it's District 1. Hey. One of my friends that I grew up with, even before I even moved to Rohnert Park in Petaluma, Michael Fairbrother, this kid, he's a grown man now, he was doing construction and he was working a few houses down from when, her murder taking place. So there's like, there's the different degrees of separation. And the kid that, an 18-year-old that did that, it's like, how do we prevent that kind of stuff? I have to say rest in peace to my cousin, Nakisha. She was a 2nd grader at Walter Rohnert Elementary School. And she was killed by not a drunk driver, a young white kid in Santa Rosa, ran a red light, killed her and her 2-year-old brother. I think he was 2 or 1 at the time. And there's a memorial bench at Howard's Park for her. And if you guys are out there, why don't you go like an Easter egg hunt and try to find it. We have so many things that we have to deal with. There's been lots of people that have been killed or had died or suicide, different things in Rohnert Park. I know, I grew up there and I went to school, high school with them. I went to 8th grade with them. So we have so many community issues. And so I want to say to all of you, all the listening audience, everybody, I want to say, Chief, thank you so much for having me. My name is Tina Rogers. Lupe, hola, gracias for your time. Jill, thank you very much for making sure that this is all, going on. If anyone would like to reach me, I can be reached at funkystylestreetdance@gmail.com. funkystylestreetdance@gmail.com. I look forward to listening, and if I'm invited back, I would love to do this again. All of the questions that did not get answered, please go ahead and email the chief. And we as a community will all unite to make Sonoma County, not just the hub of Sonoma County, Katati Rohnert Park, all of us, do better. We all have to do better. And if we're going to be leaders, and especially in law enforcement, that's a major title. And my mother's father was a Newark, New Jersey police officer. So I am down with the black, brown, blue, white, pink, yellow, whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? But we have to do better. And hour is not long enough for all of this. So everybody, thank you guys very much. Chief, is there anything that you have to say to me?
Well, first of all, thank you. This has been a great discussion. And I knew you weren't going to take it easy on me, and I appreciate that. You and I have talked about the fact that part of getting through this and getting better is just getting the conversation going, and start talking, and I've learned a lot from you in our conversations, and I appreciate that. And we will keep communicating, and I will have you back on.
Thank you.
And because I'm getting more thank you Tinas than I am thank you Chief. So I think you might have to get your own podcast soon, but
Right.
yeah, thank you so much. This has been a great hour, and we'll get you back.
Thank you. And I want to say this last thing to you. There were a lot of thank yous in the chats, and like, what do we do when we want to say thank you to the police officer, to the police department? I say, email the chief, email them, and attend all your city council meetings and school board meetings, and everybody across the whole entire world, whoever's listening and watching this here, we all got to do better. We all have to support each other, and we're not all going to get anything right, but we must, take in account to when people lose their lives unnecessarily. And that is something that must change. And like you said, you have officers that are dealing with that every day, but they're alive dealing with it. And so I just want to say, from my heart to everyone else's heart, thank you all. Have a good evening, and bless all of us.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for joining.